All right, so for the next video, I'm going to go through dextrose and glucagon, just because both of them are, related to hypoglycemia, and they kind of have, you know, pretty similar functions. So first off, we'll go through dextrose, in parentheses D5, D10, and D50, which is used for the relative concentrations of them. So dextrose is just glucose. It is literally just D-glucose, which is the most naturally, abundant isomer of glucose that plants have and that our bodies can use. You put this into the bloodline. Unless somebody is a diabetic and doesn't have insulin receptors, this is very, very quickly uptaken by the body. And your cells can use it to generate ATP for energy. So in terms of the D50, D25 and D10, it's basically the amount that's in a certain volume. So let's say we take 100 milliliters, right? D50 would be, we have 50 milligrams in those 100 milliliters. D25, 25 milligrams, and D10 is 10 milligrams. And the reason we need these different concentrations is because we worry about the effects of extreme, maybe not extreme, but just more concentrated solutions of dextrose, of glucose, if we're giving that to neonates or pediatrics, how they can handle that. Can they compensate with that higher blood sugar as well as adults can? And so, if we want to give them the same amount of sugar, we usually aim for something lower like D10 and just use more volume. So the indication is obviously hypoglycemia. When somebody has a low blood sugar, we're always thinking about something like this or glucagon when we have altered mental status patients, because this can be a very, very common reason as to why people have an altered mental. Sugar levels, diabetics who take their insulin and take their insulin and forget to eat, and their sugar drops like crazy, or people just who haven't eaten or just have low glycogen stores in general. So our dose in general is 0.5 grams per kilogram for adults and peds. And then for neonates, we usually do 0.2 grams per kilogram. Now, the reason that this changes is because, like we said, at D50, 25, and 10, those concentrations are different. So we need to start thinking about volumes, basically. So for adults, kids who are under 18, who are adult-ish size, we're good giving this to them, but we're going to give D50. And we're going to usually give 1 milliliter per kilogram. And if you think about it, this makes sense because D50 would be 0.5 per kilogram, right? So that will, that's not supposed to say grams. That's supposed to say milligrams. That's my bad. So it would actually, it's not supposed to be 0.5 grams or 0.2 grams. It would be 0.5 milligrams, 0.2 milligrams. But it would be, for an adult, it would still, the math would give you 0.5 milligrams per kilogram at 1 milliliter if you use D50. For peds, we have a cutoff. So if they are 20 kilograms or more, we feel confident giving them D25. Like we said again, that would come out to 2 milliliters per kilogram, which at D25, 2 milliliters would be 0.5 or 0.5 milligrams. So we'd still be giving 0.5 milligrams per kilogram. We're just giving it in a higher volume. Less than 20 kilograms, this is where we're kind of getting into that neonate-ish range where we're going to leave it at D10. We're going to do 5 milliliters per kilogram. So the dosing still comes out the same. We're just using a more dilute solution. For neonates, we're using D10 at 2 milliliters per kilogram. Gives us the same thing. We can do this IV or IO. Both are good. Both give very fast and quick access to the vasculature. Probably rather do IV, but God forbid you could not find an IV for the life of you. Maybe in a peds patient or something that have very small veins, then you could do an IO. The only real contraindications are hyperglycemia or normal blood glucose. That's referred to as euglycemia. You always want to get a sugar check on somebody who's altered, but someone's not going to be altered for having a normal blood glucose. So if someone has a it's good to get a sugar in general, but if someone's not altered, a lot of times there's a good chance the sugar is probably fine. Still check it, but I feel like the contraindications are kind of, you know, they're kind of obvious. And then I just put a picture of the sugar there. It's all the same, just a hexose. Glucagon. So glucagon is just a hormone that's produced in your body. It kind of has a yin and yang relationship with insulin. Glucagon raises blood sugar, insulin decreases it. Glucagon, we're using this for the same reason as dextrose. Both of these are really good for people with low blood sugars who are altered because, if someone's altered, I'm not going to have you eat something. I'm not going to make a PB&J and have you eat it because what if you're allergic to peanut butter and you couldn't tell me that or anything like that if you can't, follow directions. So glucagon works via glycogenolysis, which is, the breakdown of glycogen stores. Or a majority of our glycogen stores are in the liver and a good amount in skeletal muscle as well. So it comes in, breaks up that tree, and makes individual glucose molecules, which can then be transported out of the cell into the blood and moved around, and your sugar will go up. So in terms of indications and our dosing, hypoglycemia is our telltale, low blood sugar levels. For adults, we're going to give 1 to 2 milligrams. This is part of this is, provider discretion, which one you would rather give. If somebody feels like they're really, really altered or their blood sugar's really low, then, maybe you need to give like 2 milligrams. Or, if someone's isn't quite as bad, you could just give the 1. Peds dose is 0.1 milligrams per kilogram. And then we have the max of 2 milligrams. It's just going to be the adult dose usually. And then the contraindications, oh my God, I'm messing up. Should say hyperglycemia. You're never, or normal blood glucose levels. You're never going to give something to raise someone's blood glucose if they already if their blood glucose is high or if it's just normal. We're only going to do this if their blood glucose levels are low and that needs to be raised. Another point I wanted to make here is that sometimes you will not see a great response from glucagon, and that would be because somebody already has depleted glycogen stores. So if someone just, has already had, maybe like super excessive exercise or just hasn't eaten anything all day, or, any other reason why it might be, and they just, have used all those glycogen stores to try and keep refueling their body, glucagon's not going to do anything because that's how it acts, is breaking down glycogen. So it's always good to have something like dextrose on board that actually is is actually providing sugar, because the body cannot make that on demand, from scratch really. So yeah, that is glucagon. And then here's just a little diagram. It's produced in the pancreas. It goes to the liver, causes glycogen to break down and be made into individual glucose, and then that comes back to the goes back to the blood vessels, and everything's all good. Everything's homeostatic. So, and that's the end.